Alright, so today we're going to be covering segments again, but this time we're going to do segments on the coordinate plane. Okay, so if we look here, we're going to be using two formulas. The first one is a distance formula. And so in your distance formula, you're going to start off by subtracting your x values, starting with the second point. That's why it says x2, and then you subtract the x value on your first point. Okay, and then you're going to square that, then add it, and then subtract the values of your y, starting with the second point. Okay, so that's our distance formula. The next formula is going to be your midpoint formula. So you have your 2 points, which are x1, y1, and x2, y2. And then to find the point that is in the middle, if you notice, it's in the form of a point, okay, or a coordinate. It has your parentheses, it has a comma in the middle, and then it has the other parentheses over here. So this is a point, okay? And so to be able to find out what your x value is that's in the middle between these 2 points is you add the x's together and divide by 2. So pretty much like you get the average. Okay, and then you add the y values together and you divide by 2. So I'm going to show you both with the formula and on the graph. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. The first one says, graph and label and connect the endpoints. A is 1, 2, and B is 5, 4. So I'm going to go ahead and graph those. We have 1, 2. So 1, 2 would be right here. And then we have 5, 4. Okay, so here it tells us to first find the length of segment AB. So what they want us to do is find the distance from here all the way to right here. So this is my first point. So this is my x1, y1. Okay, and then this is my second point. So this is my x2, y2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write down the formula. It is going to be distance equals the square root of, you subtract your x values, and you square it, plus you subtract your y values, and you square it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look. So my x values here, remember we're starting with our second point, is 5 and 1. So our distance equals the square root of, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just plug these in here. So I'm just going to rewrite it. And so here, my x value starting with the second point we said was 5 minus 1. Okay, on the other section, we have here 4 and 2. Those are my y values. Remember, we start with the second point. So my second point is 4, so we're going to do 4 minus 2. All right, so our distance here equals the square root of 5 minus 1 gives us 4. Okay, and then 4 squared is 16. Plus. Okay, and then we do 4 minus 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So we're going to go ahead and 16 plus 4 is 20. So we're going to find the square root of 20, which gives us, I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my calculator. The square root of 20 gives us 4.47. They want us to round to the nearest 10, so that would round to 4.5. Okay, the next one says, find the midpoint of line segment AB. Graph it after you find the answer to make sure that it makes sense. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and find the midpoint. So we're going to use a midpoint formula. And remember our midpoint formula, I'm going to put an M here for midpoint, is we add our x values. x1 plus x2. And then you divide by 2, and then you do the same for your y values. You add your y values, y1 plus y2, and you divide by 2. Okay, so when we plug that in, my x values, remember, are 1 and 5. Now this one, we don't start with the second point. We're starting with the first point. So 1 plus 5 and divided by 2. That's going to give us the x value. And then for the y value, we're going to go ahead and take 2 plus 4 and divide it by 2. Okay, so 1 plus 5 gives us 6. So my midpoint is 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. Comma, 2 plus 4 is also 6. Divided by 2 is 3. So then when I graph this point or the midpoint, we're going to graph 3, 3. So 3, 3 would be right here. And so this is the middle of the line. I know my line was a little bit crooked when I made this, so that's why it's not right on the line, but it should be. Now, the second section, finding the endpoint. So these are a little bit tricky, so just be very careful when you're working with these ones. It tells you the midpoint of JK is M21. Okay, so this time they already give us the midpoint. So the midpoint of segment JK is M, which is 2, 1. So I'm going to go ahead and graph the midpoint real quick. So 2, 1. And to help you from making a mistake when you're doing these is if you label it and you put an M here for midpoint. Okay, that might help you just a little bit. And then it tells you one of the endpoints, which is J, is 1, 4. So I'm going to go ahead and graph 1, 4 would be up here. Okay, and then we need to figure out what is K, okay, because remember the segment here is JK, so we're looking for K. Now because M is in the middle, it means it's going to be somewhere over here, okay? I don't know exactly where it's going to be at, but when we connect this, M's going to be right in the middle, something like that. Okay, so the way that I'd be able to tell, which makes it a little bit simple, is we could just count the spaces. So it goes down 1, 2, 3 units and to the right 1. So we're going to have to go an equal amount. So 1, 2, 3 units down and 1 to the right. And that'll tell you exactly where K needs to be, okay, for M to be right in the middle. So it says graph the 2 points and label to help you solve the problem. Graph the answer to make sure that it makes sense, okay? So this one, they probably used the formula already. I wanted to show you off the graph because I think that's the most simplest thing. But we say K is 3, 2. So K is 3, 2. So to check, I'm going to go ahead and use the midpoint. Oh, it's -2, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and check using the midpoint formula. So just a reminder, our midpoint formula, we're going to add our x values. So in this case, my x values are 1 and 3. So 1 plus 3 and divided by 2. Okay, we're just checking here, okay? And then here we have 4 and -2. 4 plus -2 is my y values, and then we divide by 2. So when I go ahead and do this, 1 plus 3 gives me 4, divided by 2 is 2, comma, and then 4 plus -2 gives me 2, divided by 2 gives me 1. So if you notice, I did find K correctly because that's what they gave us for the midpoint, okay? So that's just checking our work. All right, moving on. So here it says graph and label the following points. So they give us A, B, C, and D. They want us to connect the points. And when we connect the points, we connect them in alphabetical order. Okay, so let me go ahead and start off with point A is -4, -3. Remember, you have to label them, okay? And then here we have B is -3, 1. So -3 and 1. Next, we have C is 3, 1. So 3, 1. And we put a C here. And then last is D, which is 5, -3. So 5, -3, which is right here. And this is D. Okay, and then they tell us to go ahead and connect them. So these are straight lines. And then here we have the distance from A to B and C to D. Okay, so first they want us to find the distance from A to B. Okay, so we're going to use the distance formula. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it again. D equals the square root of, and then we subtract our x values and square it, plus we subtract our y values and square it. Okay. Remember, we start with the second point, so x2 minus x1 and y2 minus y1. Okay, so starting with our x values. So if we look here, our x values are -4 and -3. Now you need to be very careful when you are plugging this in because you can't forget the negative, okay? So starting with the second point, it's -3 minus, and then x1 is negative. So minus -4, you have to write in those two negatives in there, okay? Because if not, you're not going to get this correct. And then plus, let's go ahead and take a look at our y values. So those were our x values. We take a look at our y values here, and they are -3 and 1, but we start with the second point. So we're going to do 1 minus, whoops, a -3. Okay, so be careful. You're supposed to subtract the y value, and your y value is negative, so you do have to write the two negatives. Okay, that turns these into a positive. Okay, so -3 plus 4 gives me 1, and 1 squared is 1, plus 1 plus 3 gives me 4, and 4 squared is 16, and then the square root of 1 plus 16 would be the square root of 17, which gives us 4.1. Okay, so the distance from A to B is equal to 4.1. Okay, now let's find the distance from B to C. Now, if you notice from B to C, it is not slanted like A to B is. It is straight across on these lines. So we don't have to use a distance formula. We can just count the spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So BC gives us exactly 6. Okay. From C to D, now if you notice from C to D it's slanted, so we can't. We're going to use a distance formula, which is equal to the square root. Remember, you subtract your x values starting with the second point, and we square it, plus we subtract our y values starting with the second point, and we square it. Okay, so then from there, from C to D, if we start with our, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out from C to D. Looking at our x values, it's 3 and 5, and we start with the second point. So we're going to do 5 minus 3. That's in parentheses and squared. Our distance equals square root. Plus, let's go ahead and subtract our y values starting with the second point. So my y values here are -3 minus 1. Okay, -3 minus 1. Now I don't have to write a double negative because 1 isn't negative, it's a positive. So that's why it's just -1. So I go ahead and start solving. 5 minus 3 is 2, and 2 squared gives us 4, plus -3 minus 1 gives us -4, and -4 squared is 16. So this ends up being the square root of 20, which we already got. We said was 4.5. All right, and then last from A to D. So this is from A to D, just like the last problem. It is straight across on top of the line, so we're not going to go through all the work to solve it again. We're just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 9 spaces. That means the distance from there to there is 9. Okay, it asks us to find the perimeter of the geometric figure formed by the points. So we're going to have to use the 4 distances that we found. So we're going to add them all up. So we have perimeter equals, the first side that we found was 4.1, and we found 6, then we found 4.5, and then 9. So when we add all those together, give me 1 second just to add them up. That gives us 23.6. And we don't know what our units are, so we're just going to put U for units. Then it tells us find the midpoint of AB. Okay, so we're going to use the midpoint formula. Remember, you add your x values, x1 plus x2, divided by 2. And then you add your y values. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and take a look. Our x values for A and B are -4 plus -3, and we're going to divide that by 2. And then we have for our y values, it is -3 plus 1 divided by 2. If you're confused where I'm getting these numbers from, I'm using these ones here. All right, so let's go ahead and simplify that. Here we have -4 plus -3 is -7. And then negative 7 divided by 2 gives us negative 3.5. So that's my x value of my midpoint. Now let's find the y value. So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Divided by 2 gives us 1. Okay, now let's graph it to see if our answer makes sense or if it looks like it's in the middle. So negative 3.5 would be about right here. And then we go down 1, which would be about right here, which looks about right. That does look like the midpoint. Okay, so that helps you check your work. Okay. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you next time.